Here. So I wanted to record this conversation with you, Pedro, about some of the work we've been doing and I guess share it with a broader audience and get everyone's feedback. But I guess before we dive in, some context might help anyone joining in this conversation that hasn't been, I don't know, reading all our agenda notes and following along in all our UX discovery issues for the last 6 months. But I guess to set the scene, in the next release of GitLab 12.5, we're shipping a range of nice improvements for performance and navigation based on the UX research we've been doing. We've also got an exciting new source graph integration, which really levels up the merge request interface, allowing you to jump between code based on jump to definition and finding references and things like that. Really important improvements, along with other improvements we've shipped over the past year, including multiple assignees, multiple approval rules, code owners suggesting changes. All these are based on UX feedback, but I guess they're kind of iterating on what we already have, improving it, listening to feedback, but not substantially changing the workflow. And we've been hearing feedback from customers in our interviews and discussions and comments being left on issue boards about how we might really take merge requests further and solve some harder, more complex problems. And the merge request is a really significant place where people do a lot of work. It's where everyone collaborates on merge requests, it's where code quality is ensured, and as a result, significant time is spent in this interface. And so I guess we've been asking ourselves how we can significantly decrease the cycle time, increase the efficiency of code review, and I guess create maybe new ways of collaborating. I think the merge request interface we've got today is pretty similar in a lot of ways than it was 5 years ago. I mean, we've improved it a lot, but it's fundamentally the same workflow. So I think there's 3 key questions that we've kind of asked ourselves and have surfaced through research, which are catching up and understanding where the merge request is. So since I last looked at it, what needs my attention, what's changed, helping me more efficiently review that difference after that first review. The other one is considering real-time collaboration. A lot of teams are based in the same location or same time zone and have significant overlap. Even at GitLab, most people who work together have a couple of hours of overlap in a day and look at things at similar sorts of times. So if people are coming to the same merge request, working on it at the same time, how can we make that more efficient? And then remote is a really big value we have at GitLab. Asynchronous communication is something that we do really well, but it's a tool, and sometimes it's a better tool to work synchronously, to get on a call and like solve confusions, communicate, sketch things out, and then document those decisions. But the merge request doesn't provide a natural way to do that. We use Zoom, we use Google Docs, and then we try and summarize it in the merge request or issues. Wouldn't it be great if we could find a way to integrate all that into the merge request? So those are some of the things we've been thinking about as we've been solving the more obvious, simpler problems. How can we solve these harder, more complicated, large problems that maybe require rethinking the things that we've come to sort of accept as the default of merge requests? So Pedro, I'll hand over to you to maybe share some of the mock-ups and wireframes of where we've landed so far, and add some color with a concrete example.
Sure. Yeah, I think the best way to explain some of the ideas that we've been thinking about and how we could solve these problems is through a short visual story. And so you can see exactly how all of these pieces fit together, and these key items, these 3 key items that James highlighted. So let me share my screen. See. Okay. Are you seeing my screen? Cool.
I can.
Awesome. So let's get started. So this is very low fidelity mock-ups so that we can focus on the essential details, and I'll walk you through some steps of this short visual story. So in this first step, as a reviewer, I can see what has happened since I last reviewed this merge request. And you can see at the top here that there are two files that didn't need my attention that I need to review. Maybe they were changed since the last time that I was here. And there's also one comment that needs my attention. Someone replied to my initial comment, or maybe someone resolved a comment and I need to see why it was resolved. So I can immediately have this personal area where I see what is most important to me. So I click through to see this comment that I need to reply to. And I can see that in this discussion, James and Catherine are having an argument about what this change is for. And it's a bit of convoluted discussion. There's a lot of different topics going on. But because they're in different time zones, I'm just going to leave a comment here so that they can then read it in their own time. But it would be great if we could involve someone that is familiar with this topic. So the moment that I start at mentioning someone, I have this useful list of suggestions of people who to mention. And the first one is Andre. And Andre, it says here that he's not only the code owner of this file that we're changing, but he's also the person who last changed this line of code. And this is incredibly important because I think that it's a good indication that Andre might have some good background information and could help us move this discussion forward.
So
yeah,
I think we already do something like this, right? In that we suggest people who are already involved in the conversation, like people who created the issue. But this mock-up is trying to bring in new forms of data and also, I think, more clearly highlight the people and why they're relevant. Whereas maybe today we just show like a sorted list that's got some funny sorting that isn't maybe immediately obvious to the user. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we have this funny sorting that has one sorting in one place, but then in other places has a different sorting, and you don't know necessarily how that sorting works because that's not visible. So maybe if we made that visible and explain why we're sorting in this way and make it a bit more clever, it can be more useful. And this is one of the cases where you can immediately see that the first person is the person that is most attached to this file or to this specific line of code. Then you have the author, and then you have reviewers. Maybe we can then list the reviewers so you can quickly ping them. So yeah, I'll leave the comment. And meanwhile, while I'm doing my review, I noticed that both James and Catherine are now online. So you see this indicator with their avatars, which means that they're online, very much similar to how you would see someone in Google Docs looking at the same document that you're looking. It means that they're now actively focused on this merge request. And I receive at the same time a notification in the browser saying that Catherine mentioned me in a comment. And I can also see that James is typing a reply to a comment that I just left. So I can see people interacting with the merge request in real time. I can notice their presence, but I'm not necessarily seeing what they're typing, and I'm not collaborating directly with them. We're just going about doing our own tasks separately.
Yeah, so this I think is really, really cool and exciting because it sort of helps people know that each other are there, right? And we might change the way we work together if we can expect an immediate response. Like if I see you typing somewhere and then I'm responding to you on a different thread, I might ask you a question which is sort of more open-ended because I know that you're probably able to respond quite quickly.
Exactly.
Versus maybe writing a longer response that sort of seeks to conclude the discussion faster because I don't know when you're next going to look at it and I don't want the discussion to drag out another 2 days. But if you're there, I know there's a high chance that we can wrap this up.
Correct.
So I can sort of have that free roaming discussion. We can sort of understand things better and change the way we work based on who's working on the same things.
Exactly. And this is very helpful, not only for people that work distributedly and asynchronously, like we do at GitLab as a remote only company, but I think also for people that work in the same time zone, maybe even in the same location, in the same office, in the same room, it's quite important to have this visibility that people are also looking. It creates it gives you more expectations and a sense of progress to the merge request as well.
Yeah, one thing I remember working in previous teams, and I've seen to a limited extent at GitLab as well, is often when you're waiting on a code review, you don't really know if someone's looked at it. And if you're working on a code, on a merge request and you're the author of it, and you can just see people coming in and out looking at it, you know that something's happening, even if they maybe haven't finished doing the review. It saves me walking over to their desk, or someone walking over to my desk, which used to interrupt me all the time when I worked in an office with people. Or even if people don't tap you on the shoulder physically, they might send you a Slack message and be like, hey, did you look at this thing? And that might be interrupting or unnecessary. Yeah. This gives a sense of progress without necessarily needing to sort of have someone take an active measure to find out if progress is being made. Exactly. So I think that's a really exciting thing for users, because progress is one of those things that we all want to feel when we're waiting on someone else or something else.
Exactly. And this is just one of the many ideas that we have around providing this sense of progress to authors of merge requests and also reviewers. There's these two roles that are in play in a merge request and in a code review. And this is just one of those ideas. So now that I see that they're online and actively commenting and working on this merge request, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could just work together, collaborate on the open threads and open discussions, and then close them out and have clear next steps? So let me try to do that. So I can, clicking on this part with the avatars, I can immediately start a shared session or invite them to a Zoom meeting. So Zoom is a tool that we use a lot here at GitLab for video calls, much like Skype or other video meeting tools. And when I invite James and Catherine to this Zoom meeting, I'm also going to start a shared session, a shared collaborative session in the merge request. And what does that mean? So when I start, they're invited to both the Zoom call and to share the session in the merge request. And this means that now you can see this indicator here saying that we're sharing the session. I can now follow James and Catherine and see which files they're looking at or in which lines they're commenting, and also what they're writing. I can ask to be followed if I want to focus all of the participants' attention to a specific comment or file. Maybe I can even copy a link to this shared session and paste it on Slack, or another chat tool or an email, so that others can join without having to go through finding the merge request and etc. And the most important thing, I think, is the ability to co-author and collaborate in real time in comments in the merge request. So not only replying and starting comments in the changes that are being made in the lines of code, etc., but also in the overview, in the regular discussion, comments and threads that are not attached to specific lines. So you have the ability to collaborate on these different types of comments if you have a Zoom meeting open or another video call, or maybe you're offline in the office, just next to each other with a shared session, you can quickly reach consensus and know that these comments and these decisions and these thoughts and opinions were authored together, and people can edit them and just publish a joint comment.
This is really cool. It looks a lot like a Google Doc working together, but then exactly on a merge request. I think if we work out how to do this right on merge requests, we can apply it to issues as well, which is the other area I think, and epics as well, which I think would be super relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that some teams that work in the same office really close to each other do code reviews in a meeting room where they put the code on a projector and they're all reviewing it together. Everyone's got their laptops, but they're sort of looking at the same thing.
Right.
This all of a sudden would allow everyone to sort of be taking those notes collaboratively, putting them down, sharing them, because it's often hard to see what's on a projector, or if you're doing it over Zoom, like some people do code reviews, like screen sharing, it can be really hard to follow. And this kind of creates an interesting way of documenting and sort of bridging that gap. And I imagine you'll find it useful when there's a finer points of UX that are being discussed and someone's like demoing like maybe some animations or buttons or something like that in a workflow or something like that.
Yeah.
And you want to take notes and sort of allow them to take notes, and you're sort of swapping who's leading the meeting and the other person can pick up and take notes.
Exactly.
We use Google Docs for that today, but this would, in theory, and hopefully replace the need to sort of have all these like many different tools open simultaneously while we're on a video call.
Yes, and for me personally, it would remove the need of always starting comments with saying, as discussed with X, or I just chatted with Y about this and we decided Z. So it automatically notes that who started the comment and who's also collaborating on this comment. So people don't have to write, and we know that these comments were made together and they're joint decisions and opinions. And also the use case that you highlighted, having a projector in an office and people going through a code review. It's something that we've heard a couple of times in user interviews. So there are other companies that are also doing that. So there are many use cases that we can solve here. And I think from a user experience standpoint, it's really important that we try to use metaphors and patterns that people have seen in other tools and common tools. So you were mentioning like this looks like Google Docs. And I think that's a good thing, right? Because people can immediately relate and understand what these cursors mean. And also this top part with the avatars, like people are looking at this merge request. So using these same paradigms with not at face value, but also studying and understanding if they fit into the specific context is something that we're very, we try to do at GitLab. It's one part of our values, our boring solutions value. So yeah, this is great, and it allows us to. Let me just. I was trying to move this to the side, but yeah, so we can quickly reach a consensus using this way of collaboration, and we can even leave a comment in the regular thread so that others can see what we were discussing, what were the decisions, and what are the next steps after me, Catherine, and James met inside of this merge request. And this was way quicker way of collaborating and getting to the resolution of all of these discussions, instead of having to quickly, instead of just leaving comments and expecting others to reply, because we're all looking at the same merge request. This was way faster. And one of the best parts is that we don't have to jump from tool to tool. So we are working in a merge request, we're writing the comments, we're writing the notes of our call and what we're discussing in this short collaborative meeting. And we're in the same tool looking at everything and recording the decisions. We don't need to write things in paper or in a Google Doc or in a chat tool and then copy them over to a GitLab. Everything is recorded in GitLab. And you can use other tools like Zoom, Slack, or others like a video projector, right? To collaborate better depending on your work setting and what works best for in your company. But everything in the end is recorded in the same tool, in the same integrated environment that is GitLab.
And this is really about having a single source of truth, which I think is one of the great things about GitLab. having issues, merge requests, CI, all the stages of the DevOps lifecycle in one place, all connected together, means there isn't data duplication. And I think this is starting to, and hopefully will, grow into a solution that allows us to, and other teams, to stop using tools like Google Docs for information that immediately then gets replicated into their merge requests, into their issues, just allowing it to go directly into the single source of truth where the decision and discussion is relevant.
Yeah. And so one last idea that we wanted to show to complete this short visual story is the ability of communicating decisions and rationale for the future. So one thing that we see happening a lot inside of GitLab and in other companies, that people, when they're explaining something in writing, in a comment, in an email, in a chat tool, when they're explaining a decision or why we shouldn't touch in this specific part of the code because it could break this or that, that usually should be a code comment. That usually should be left for posterity so that other people that eventually change, future authors and in future merge requests, they can see why this decision was made, why this function or why this class shouldn't be changed or renamed or something like that. So after our call and our shared session in the merge request with James and Catherine, I decided to go back to one of our comments, and I feel like it's so important for people in the future to know why we discussed this in the merge request, that now I have the ability to commit this comment that I wrote here as a file comment. So this is, if you've used our suggestions feature inside of merge requests. If you haven't, you should. It's a great feature. And it basically allows you to write comments as normally, but also apply part of what you're writing in your comment directly into the file. With this idea, we're moving the comments that you usually make in a multiplayer discussion and applying them to the file itself. And so once this merge request is merged, this file will have this file comment, and other authors and in future merge requests, they can understand what was discussed here.
And the great thing about moving it into the actual file rather than leaving it as a comment in the merge request is that it becomes accessible wherever the code is. It's in the Git repository. It's got a timestamp. It's part of the whole history. And
yeah, even in local IDEs, right? So if I open this,
it means if you refactor your repository, split this module out into another repository, the comment follows the function or a line of code. So I think there's this is a really interesting proposal.
Yeah. So this is, again, a short visual story to show a couple of ideas. We're not entirely sure how these will be executed, if all of them are viable or not, if they're good ideas. And that's why we'd love people to comment on the issue that we have open for feedback, and leave your what you liked, what you didn't like, what other ideas you have that could improve code review. And again, this short story doesn't mean that we're going through with these ideas. It's just some things that we've been thinking about and that we think can, at least their directions to solve one of those big problems that we've been seeing with code review in GitLab.
Yeah. I think one of the, maybe we talk about some of those questions that have come up briefly. One of them that's sort of surfaced is around privacy. People feeling concerned about revealing when they're looking at a merge request, who that's going to be revealed to, whether that would then create a situation where people start interrupting them. And I think that's another concern, is like interrupting flow. Like if I'm coming in to do a code review, I might want to just go deep and understand it. How do I avoid being interrupted? And so I think those are some of the interesting issues we're going to have to wrestle with and consider, balancing those interests against the other interests of helping teams work efficiently, making sure that we can find some sort of middle ground, where people can sort of choose to be more private or quietly observing things versus people that want to have the maximum efficiency, collaborate in real time when everyone's there.
Yeah. So I think what right now GitLab's merge requests are very much similar to an email conversation. So you're sending emails, you're receiving emails, and it's not real-time discussion. You're not seeing what other people are writing. You don't know when you're going to get a response. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have Google Docs where you see exactly what people are typing in real time. Somewhere closer to Google Docs, you have Slack, which is a chat tool and is very much focused on that synchronous communication, although it can also be used for asynchronous communication. And I think we want to be in the middle here. We don't want to be a Google Doc, always on, always real time, but we also don't want to stay as an email client for you to collaborate on code, right? We want to be smarter than that, and we want to enable collaboration in the right moments. And so, as you said, James, I think privacy is a big concern, and also privacy in the sense of pressure that you have on your shoulders, knowing that other people are seeing what you're writing, or that other people are watching the same merge request. I don't know, and that's why we are sharing this, and we need people's feedback. Yeah. This is one of the concerns that we've realized. This is maybe one of our blind spots. There could be other blind spots, so we'd love the community to contribute.
And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we discussed having this sort of, you could type your comment privately working on a review, but people can't see the comment until you either start sharing it in one of these collaborative sessions or you submit it. So that, because writing constructive, thoughtful code review feedback is hard. And so
exactly,
we don't want to interrupt that or make that even harder by knowing that literally every keystroke you type could be observed by someone else, because that makes it hard to leave notes and quickly sort of skim the merge request and then come back to them. They might be misinterpreted while they're still in draft form. We want to make sure that we absolutely don't compromise those kinds of workflows that we know are very common. And also, there might be other even more amazing, out there, crazy ideas that we haven't thought of, which would take the merge request to an exciting new place. So don't just give us feedback on the ideas that we've come up with. Feel free to give us even more crazy new ideas that you think would make the merge request an even better place to work and get your job done.
Yeah.
Do you have any other closing thoughts, Pedro?
No, I think you said it all. I think that's the best way to close it off.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and please leave feedback in the issue that'll be linked below this video in the description. Have a good day.